When I pushed open the door to our future wedding home, Lila Reed was sitting on my new couch holding a baby. She was wearing Ethan Bennett's shirt, and the baby crib I'd bought ahead of time sat at her feet. My mom had forced that crib on me when she'd started pressuring me to get married, saying I shouldn't scramble at the last minute when we had a baby. Now pink and blue little bells hung from the headboard, and a sticky note was stuck to the side. It was Ethan's handwriting. Lila wakes up easily at night. Don't leave the bottle too far away. I stood in the entryway, still holding the framed wedding photos I'd just picked up. Lila saw me first, a flicker of panic crossing her face. "Clara, you're back." The baby in her arms made a soft whimper. She immediately looked down and patted it gently, as if afraid she might shatter something. Ethan came out of the kitchen holding a bowl of soup. He saw me and paused for only a second. "What are you doing here today?" That question was almost funny. This was supposed to be our home. We were supposed to move in after the wedding next month. I set the frame down on the entryway console. The surface had been empty, waiting for our wedding photo. Now it was covered with disinfectant wipes, bottle brushes, baby cotton wipes, and Lila's postpartum nutritious meals menu. I asked, "Why is she here?" Ethan put the soup bowl down on the coffee table and frowned at me. "Lila just had a baby. Her ex-husband won't take care of her. Her parents are out of town. And there was a last-minute problem with the postpartum recovery center. I told her she could stay here for a month." He said it so naturally, like he was putting a guest up in a spare bedroom. But this house didn't have a spare bedroom. The master bedroom had the 4-piece bedding set I'd picked out. The closet held the reception gown I'd bought for the wedding. The bathroom shelf had our matching toothbrushes. Now the master bedroom door was open, and Lila's postpartum care forms were on the nightstand. My reception gown had been moved to a storage bin outside. Layla spoke softly. "Clara, don't get the wrong idea. I really had nowhere else to go." Ethan was worried I'd struggle with the baby alone, so he let me stay. Ethan cut in quickly. "She just gave birth. She can't handle any stress right now." I looked at him. "What about me?" His eyes flickered. I pointed to the frame in the entryway. "I picked up the wedding photos today. The studio said you canceled the retouched prints last week and replaced them with solo shots. Was that also because she can't handle stress?" Ethan's face finally changed. Layla's hands tightened around the baby. The living room fell silent for a few seconds, broken only by the baby's faint whimpers. Ethan stepped in front of me and lowered his voice. "Clara Hale, can you please not bring up old fights right now?" I laughed a little. "Right now when?" His frown deepened. "Lila's going through a really hard time. Always a hard time. It was a hard time when she came back to the country. It was a hard time when she got divorced. It was a hard time when she had the baby. And now canceling our wedding photos was also because she was going through a hard time." I looked down at my phone. My application for designated staff housing had been approved. The message was from Ms. Chloe Foster in administration. "Ms. Hale, your key is ready for pickup today. The room's been cleaned." 3 months earlier, when the Institute had built a new research building with a block of staff apartments, the director had asked if I wanted to move in. I'd said no back then. Ethan didn't like me living on campus. He'd said, "I often get home late from work. If no one's here, it feels like a hotel." I'd thought that was sweet back then. I'd built my entire future around this man. So I'd given up the housing closer to the lab, turned down a long-term position at an international joint research project, and even planned our married life down to the size of the fridge and which wall would be the study. But now, where my study was supposed to be sat a baby crib, my future home housed his childhood best friend, and my fiancé stood in front of me, asking me to be understanding of another woman. Ethan saw I wasn't speaking and softened his tone a little. "I know you're upset, but it's only a month. As soon as she's recovered, I'll send her away immediately." Lila hung her head, her voice cracking. "Ethan, maybe I should just leave. It makes sense that Clara's upset. This is supposed to be your wedding home, after all." She started to get up. The baby immediately started crying. Ethan's face changed, and he turned to help her. "Don't move." He pushed her back down on the couch and took the baby from her expertly. In that moment, I thought back to last winter. I'd had a fever of 102 degrees and called him, begging him to bring me medicine. He'd said he had a company meeting and told me to order delivery. Later, I found out he'd been at a bar with Lila until 3 in the morning. Holding her while she cried drunk. He held the baby so steadily. His voice was soft as he soothed it. It's okay. Don't cry. The baby slowly stopped crying. Lila looked up at him, tears in her eyes. They looked like a perfect little family. I stood in the entryway, feeling like a delivery person who'd shown up at the wrong address. Ethan finally calmed the baby and looked up at me. Clara, you should go home for now. I'll come find you later. I picked up the photo frame from the console. He thought I was leaving, and his shoulders visibly relaxed. The next second, I opened the frame. In the photo, I was wearing my wedding dress, and Ethan stood behind me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. The photographer had told him to smile, saying he looked too cold. Ethan had said he wasn't used to having his photo taken, but on Lila's Instagram, he was holding the baby and smiling softly. I pulled out the photo and slowly tore it in half. Ethan's face darkened instantly. Clara, I put the torn pieces back on the console. You too can have the house. He stared at me, like he hadn't heard me right. I picked up my bag. I'm moving into staff housing. Ethan stepped quickly in front of me, blocking the door. What are you doing? I looked at the hand he'd stretched out to stop me. That same hand had put a ring on my finger when he proposed. He'd said, Clara, I'm not good with words, but I'll give you a home. Now that home had been lent to someone else first. I slipped the ring off my finger and placed it in his palm. The band made a soft sound as it touched his skin. His fingers froze. I said, the wedding's off. Lila's breath caught. Ethan looked up at me, a flicker of panic finally in his eyes. What did you say? I pulled the door open. You don't have to send her away this month. I'll leave. It was dark by the time I got to the staff housing. Ms. Foster handed me the key, looking surprised. Ms. Hale, aren't you getting married next month? Why the sudden move? I took the key. It's closer to the lab. She nodded and didn't ask any more questions, just helped me carry a box of files into the elevator. The apartment was on the 12th floor. 1 bedroom, 1 living room, with a small balcony. It wasn't big, but it was clean. The window faced the research building, and I could still see the lights on in the 3rd floor testing lab at night. I set the box down on the floor and opened the top layer. It wasn't clothes. It was 7 years of my project research, dozens of hard drives, 3 notebooks, and dozens of handwritten proofreading drafts. Ethan had always said my job was boring. You're a girl, spending all day in the lab smelling like machine oil. He'd said, like it was a joke. I'd laughed along. Later, I'd even started spending less time in the testing labs and more time taking care of him. He had a weak stomach, so I learned to make soup. He hated networking events, so I memorized all his clients' preferences. His mom didn't approve of my ordinary background, so I went out of my way to please her over and over again. I'd thought putting effort into a relationship was worth it, until today. I realized some efforts only erase yourself. My phone rang. It was Ethan. I didn't answer. He called again. I put my phone on silent and started making the bed. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. I thought it was Ms. Foster, but when I opened it, Ethan was standing in the hallway. He was wearing the same black coat from earlier, his face dark, holding a bag of the clothes I'd left at the wedding home. Clara, you actually moved out. I took the bag from him. Thanks. He didn't let go. Do you have to make this so embarrassing? The hallway light was harsh and white. It made his features look cold and hard. Before, I would have been the one to back down first. I'd been afraid of him being upset, afraid of his silent treatment, afraid of the long cold wars that followed our fights. Now I just pulled the bag firmly from his hand. The embarrassing part is you moving Lila into our future home, not me moving out. He took a sharp breath. I told you, it's only a month, and I told you. The wedding's off. Ethan's eyes turned cold. You're using the wedding to threaten me. I looked at him. That's really what he thought. Me moving out was me throwing a tantrum. Me giving back the ring was a threat. Me canceling the wedding was me trying to force him to kick Lila out. It never occurred to him that I just didn't want it anymore. I turned to go inside. He put his hand against the door to stop me. Clara, Lila's not as complicated as you think. She just got divorced and had a baby. She's completely falling apart. I'm just helping her out. I asked. So canceling our wedding photos was also helping her? A flash of irritation crossed his face. That day she got the news her ex-husband was remarrying. She was really upset. Seeing our wedding photos would have upset her more. What about my wedding? He froze. I set the bag down in the entryway, my voice quiet. Ethan. My mom started physical therapy 6 months early just to be able to walk down the aisle at my wedding. Her leg's bad, but she walks up and down the stairs for 20 minutes every day. Just so she could hand me over to you that day. His Adam's apple bobbed. I didn't say we weren't getting married. You just thought it was okay to put me second first. He didn't say anything. That silence said everything. There were no extra chairs in the apartment. And I didn't invite him in. Ethan stood in the doorway, like he was just realizing for the first time that I hadn't left a place for him here. He softened his tone again. Clara, you're just upset right now. I'll take the ring back, and when you've calmed down, I'll put it back on your finger. I looked up at him. You can throw the ring away. His fingers tightened sharply around the ring in his coat pocket, the shape of it pressing through the fabric. You really want to do this? I didn't answer, just asked. Where's my reception gown? Ethan frowned. What? The red reception gown in the closet. He looked away. Lila said the box was in the way. I had the cleaner put it away. Where? He paused for a few seconds. In the storage room. I pulled out my phone and texted the cleaner who worked at the wedding home. She sent a photo back almost immediately. My reception gown was stuffed in a clear storage bin, under a box of baby diapers. The shoulder seams were already creased. I showed him the photo. Ethan glanced at it, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. I'll have someone iron it tomorrow. No need. I opened my chat with the wedding planner. Mia. The wedding's off. Refund whatever you can according to the contract. Cancel the dress, the venue, and the makeup artist. I hit send. Ethan's face finally changed. Clara. I looked up at him. His anger was boiling over, but underneath it, I could see panic. My phone vibrated quickly. The wedding planner replied. Clara, are you sure? Your wedding's on the 18th next month. We already printed the invitations. I replied. Cancel it. Ethan grabbed my wrist roughly. Do you have any idea how much trouble canceling the wedding will cause? What am I supposed to tell my parents? What about all our friends and relatives? I pulled my wrist free. You can tell them I was being unreasonable. He froze. I started pulling the door closed. You've been saying that about me anyway. As the door clicked shut, he put his hand against it one last time, but I didn't stop. The gap got narrower and narrower. I saw him standing outside, not yelling immediately for the first time. He just looked down at his empty hand, like he couldn't understand why I hadn't backed down this time. The next morning, I went back to the wedding home to get the rest of my things. Ethan wasn't there. Layla was. She was wearing my house slippers, standing in the kitchen heating milk. When she saw me, she instinctively hid the cup behind her back. It was my cup, the one with a little fox printed on it. Ethan had thought it was childish, but every time I came home late from work, he'd use it to pour me warm water. Now there was a lipstick stain on the rim. I didn't say anything and went straight to the closet. My clothes had been pushed to the corner. The main section was filled with Lila's coats and nightgowns. On the top shelf sat her postpartum girdle. I opened my suitcase and started folding my clothes one by one. Lila stood in the doorway holding her cup. Clara, are you really moving out for good? I didn't turn around. She sighed softly. You don't have to be so upset about me. Ethan and I have known each other for so long. Some habits are hard to break, but I know you're the most important person to him. I opened the drawer. Inside were all the mementos from Ethan and me over the years. Movie tickets, train tickets from our trips, the brochure from when we first looked at this house. On top was a new photo, Lila lying in a hospital bed, Ethan standing next to her holding the baby. There was a message written on the back. Thank you for not leaving me. It was Lila's handwriting. I took out my tickets and brochures and left the photo where it was. Lila saw and her face paled slightly. I just put that photo there by accident. And don't read too much into it. I closed my suitcase. I won't. She blinked in surprise. I pushed the suitcase toward the door. But she suddenly stepped in front of me. Clara, I know you're angry, but you should cut Ethan some slack. He's always been like this, tough on the outside, soft on the inside. He's only helping me because I really have nowhere else to turn. I looked at her. Then you should thank him. Her eyes flickered. I kept walking toward the door. In the living room, the baby suddenly started crying. Lila didn't go to pick it up. Instead, she looked at me. Clara, can you hand me the bottle? It's right next to you. I looked down. The bottle was on the lower shelf of the coffee table. Underneath it was our wedding program. My name and Ethan's name were on the cover. A corner of it was soaked with milk. I picked up the program. The milk had dried, and the pages were stuck together. That page had our vows on it. I'd rewritten them so many times. Ethan had said it was a hassle, that he'd just read whatever was there. Now he didn't have to. I threw the program in the trash. Lila's face changed. What are you doing? I handed her the bottle. Here's your bottle. She held the baby, her eyes immediately filling with tears. Clara, do you think I'm trying to steal your things? I didn't answer. Footsteps sounded at the door. Ethan was back. He was holding breakfast and a bag of baby supplies. When he saw me with my suitcase and Lila standing in the living room with red eyes, his face darkened instantly. Clara, what did you say to her? I suddenly felt exhausted. This scene was so familiar. No matter what happened, as soon as Lila cried, Ethan's first reaction was always that I'd done something wrong. I pointed to the door. I'm here to get my things. Ethan put down the breakfast and strode over to me. Got your things and now you're leaving. Cancelled the wedding. Moved into staff housing. Now you're emptying the house. What's next? Deleting me from your phone. I looked at him. There was anger in his eyes, but mostly certainty. He was certain I wouldn't actually delete him. That's how it had been for 7 years. Every time we fought, he'd ignore me for a few days, and I'd be the one to text first. When he got drunk, I'd be the one to pick him up. On his birthday, I'd plan the surprise. When his mom said hurtful things, I'd pretend not to hear. I'd been the one to patch up our relationship over and over again, and he'd just assumed I'd always come back. I pulled out my phone and, right in front of him, removed our chat from pinned messages. Then I changed his contact name from Ethan to Ethan Bennett. Finally, I turned off shared location. The phone screen was bright. Ethan stared at it for a few seconds, and the anger on his face slowly cracked. You're serious? I put my phone away. Yes. Lila held the baby and said softly, Ethan, don't be like that. Clara's probably just upset right now. Ethan didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on my suitcase. It wasn't big, but it held every last trace of me in that house. He suddenly reached out and grabbed the handle. You can take your clothes, but leave everything else. I asked, what everything else? His throat bobbed. The tickets, the photos, the little decorations you bought. I laughed. You always said they took up too much space. Before, whenever I'd added something to the house, he'd say it was unnecessary. A nightlight was unnecessary. A rug was unnecessary. Even the matching dishes in the kitchen were unnecessary. He'd said the house should be clean and simple, not cluttered. Now the house was filled with Lila and the baby's things. But he wanted to keep my old stuff. Ethan's knuckles whitened. Clara, I don't want to fight with you. Neither do I. I pulled the handle from his hand. So move. He didn't move. Just then, my phone rang. It was Director Hayes. I answered. Ms. Hale. The Boston Joint Laboratory just confirmed. The on-site project lead position you turned down earlier is still open. They said if you're still interested, you can submit your paperwork this afternoon. I looked out the window. The spring sunshine was bright downstairs. I'd turned down this opportunity twice before, afraid of the distance, afraid Ethan wouldn't like it. Now I wasn't afraid anymore. I said, I'm interested. The director laughed on the other end. Great. Come back to the institute as soon as possible to sign the papers. Will do. I hung up. Ethan's face had turned terrifyingly pale. What position? Work. Where? Boston. He looked like he'd heard something ridiculous. You're moving to Boston just to spite me. I didn't correct him. There was no point. He suddenly grabbed my suitcase again. I won't let you go. I looked at his hand. Ethan, you're not my husband. His eyes widened in shock. I said every word clearly. You're not even my fiancé anymore." The baby in the living room started crying again. Lila called out urgently, "Ethan, the baby's hungry." Ethan instinctively turned his head. For just 1 second, I pulled my suitcase and walked past him. This time, he didn't follow, because the baby in Lila's arms was crying loudly. Because for him, there was always someone who needed him more than I did. I submitted my Boston paperwork that afternoon. The director looked at my signature and banged his desk happily. "About time you took this." I organized my files. "It's never too late." The director glanced at me, didn't ask about the wedding, and pushed an old file across the desk. "This is your low-temperature energy storage proposal from 3 years ago. The review panel loved it, but you withdrew it yourself, saying there was a conflict with family plans." I opened the first page. The paper was slightly yellowed at the edges. It was covered in my handwriting. I'd worked on that proposal for 3 months straight, sleeping in the lab break room every night. Then Ethan's mom had suddenly announced the engagement party. The date was exactly the same as the final review. Ethan had said, "You can always do another review. There's only one engagement party." So I'd withdrawn my proposal, and the engagement party never happened, because Lila had come back to the country that day, and Ethan had gone to the airport to pick her up, saying we'd reschedule. Reschedule turned into 3 years. The director pointed to the file. "That's exactly the technology line Boston's restarting now. You're not starting over there. You're picking up where you left off." Those words hit me harder than any comfort could have. Picking up where I left off. I put the file in my bag. "I'll organize my materials tonight." The director nodded. "Can you leave the day after tomorrow?" "Yes." That night, I went back to my apartment and plugged my hard drives into the computer one by one. The screen lit up. All the drawings, models, and test data I'd put aside slowly came back to life. It was like another part of me that had been locked away for years finally got to breathe. A little after 10, Ethan sent a message. "The wedding planner called me. You really canceled it." I didn't reply. He sent another. "I'll explain everything to your mom." I stared at that message for a few seconds. He didn't even know my mom had moved up her surgery date just to be able to walk at the wedding. He didn't know she'd called me 3 times that afternoon, and I hadn't dared answer. I was afraid she'd hear the tears in my voice. Ethan's third message popped up. "Lila said you threw away the wedding program. Didn't you rewrite that thing 100 times? I turned off the screen. Not long after, my phone vibrated again. This time it was my mom. I answered. Her voice was bright and happy. "Clara, did you pick up the wedding photos? I walked an extra 2 laps today. The doctor says I'm recovering really well. I'll be able to stand next to you looking beautiful next month." My throat felt tight. "Mom." She immediately heard something was wrong. "What's the matter, honey?" I gripped my phone tightly. The lights in the research building were still on outside my window. I said quietly, "The wedding's off." There was a long silence on the other end. My mom didn't ask why. She just sighed softly. "Where are you? Did you eat dinner?" My eyes burned. I blinked back the tears. "I'm in staff housing. I ate." "Good." She paused. "Clara, I've been pushing you to get married because I was afraid my health would get worse, and no one would be there for you. But if that person makes you unhappy, don't marry him just to make me feel better." I stared at my fingertips on the edge of the computer. "Mom, I'm moving to Boston for work." "When?" "The day after tomorrow." She was quiet again for a moment. Then she laughed. "That's wonderful. When you were little, you loved taking things apart. All the other girls played with dolls, but you'd take apart radios and put them back together with 2 extra screws left over." I laughed a little too. She said, "Go, honey. I can take care of myself. You can't tie your whole life to someone else." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, until the computer went to sleep, and the dark screen reflected my face. I wasn't crying. I just looked a little unfamiliar. The next day, I went to the wedding planning agency to sign the cancellation forms. Mia looked at me with a complicated expression. "Clara, are you absolutely sure you don't want to talk about it? Mr. Bennett was here this morning, saying you were just having a fight." I picked up the pen. "It's not just a fight." She watched me sign the papers and sighed. "What about the dress? Your custom gown? You had it altered 3 times. We won't be able to refund much for it." I said. Donate it. Mia blinked in surprise. I pushed the papers back to her. Donate it to someone who needs it. When I walked out of the wedding planning agency, Ethan was standing on the sidewalk. He'd been waiting a long time, holding a cigarette between his fingers but not lighting it. When he saw me, he walked over quickly. Clara, you're even giving away the wedding dress now. I walked around him. He followed. I thought about it all night. I handled this badly. I can move Lila to another apartment. I stopped walking. His eyes lit up, like he thought I was finally going to listen. I asked, where? He froze. I have another apartment in my name. Then why didn't you do that in the first place? The color slowly drained from his face. I looked at him. Because you knew the wedding home was ready, had everything we needed. Felt like home. And because you knew I'd let you. Ethan's lips moved, but no words came out. Cars drove past us, the wind blowing the hem of his coat. He reached out to touch my arm. Clara. I admit I got used to you putting me first. I'll change. I promise. I stepped back. It's too late. His eyes reddened slightly. 7 years. Clara, you're throwing it all away over this one thing. This one thing. That's what he thought it was. Just one thing. I didn't bother listing all the canceled dates, all the times I'd been replaced, all the opportunities I'd given up, all the promises he'd broken and put off. I just asked. Do you remember why I withdrew the Boston project 3 years ago? Ethan froze. His face told me everything. He didn't remember. I nodded. It's fine. His face fell completely. Those 2 words hit him harder than any accusation could have. He said urgently. Tell me. I'm listening now. I looked at him, and suddenly I had nothing left to say. I'm leaving for Boston the day after tomorrow. He looked up sharply. You're really going? I walked down the steps. This time, I didn't answer. Behind me, I heard his voice. Slightly out of control. Clara, if you leave, don't come back regretting it. I didn't look back. The store window reflected my shadow alone, carrying my bag. Walking steadily. Ethan didn't come to see me off the day I left for Boston. I didn't wait for him. As the Amtrak Acela pulled out of the station, I received a photo from him. It was the living room of the wedding home. The baby things were gone from the couch. The coffee table was wiped clean, and my fox print mug was back in its place. He sent. I made her move out. 2 minutes later, another message. Come back. I looked out the window at the city speeding by and put my phone face down on the tray table. The woman sitting next to me peeled an orange and handed me a slice. Business trip, honey. I took it. Going to work. The orange was sweet. When the train arrived in Boston, someone from the joint lab was there to pick me up. His name was Liam Carter, the project execution lead. He was wearing a black windbreaker, holding a sign that said, Welcome Ms. Clara Hale, engineer. It was very formal, and very unfamiliar. I walked over to him, and he put the sign away, extending his hand. Ms. Hale, I've heard a great deal about you. I shook his hand. His palm was dry and warm. The handshake brief and professional. I've reviewed all your materials. Your proposal from 3 years ago is incredibly comprehensive. We didn't bring you here to put out fires. We brought you here to lead. Led. I hadn't heard that word in a long time. With Ethan, I was his fiancé, his family, the one who was supposed to be understanding. Here, I was Ms. Hale, the project lead they needed. The car pulled into the research campus as it was getting dark. The testing building was lit up brightly, and several young engineers were waiting at the entrance. Hello, Ms. Hale. They sounded a little nervous. I nodded, handed my luggage to the logistics person, and went straight into the conference room. The project timeline was spread across the large screen. Liam handed me a pen. Shall we go over the direction first tonight? You can take the head seat. I gripped the pen and walked to the whiteboard. In that moment, I felt it clearly. My life had moved forward, not because I'd left Ethan, but because I'd finally come back to where I belonged. The meeting went until 1 in the morning, as everyone was leaving. Liam put a bowl of rice porridge on my desk. The campus cafeteria saved this for you. No onions. Your file says you have a stomach condition. Eat something before you go. I blinked in surprise. Thank you. He smiled. Don't mention it. We can't have our project lead collapsing on our first day. It was such an ordinary thing to say, but as I looked down at the bowl of rice porridge, I thought back to years ago. I'd had such a bad stomachache I'd crouched in the company bathroom, texting Ethan for help. He'd said, "Just buy yourself some medicine. I'm with Lila meeting her lawyer." That day Lila had been preparing for her divorce. A special circumstance. Everything was always a special circumstance. Except me. I picked up the spoon and finished the rice porridge slowly. My phone lit up many times. All from Ethan. "Where are you?" Clara answered the phone. "Lila's gone. I had all the baby things removed. What am I supposed to tell my mom about the wedding?" The last message was at 1:30 in the morning. "The house feels empty." I stared at it for a long time. Then I put my phone back in my bag. The next morning, I went into the testing lab. The Boston project was harder than I'd expected. The low-temperature environment was unstable. And the previous team had tried 3 different solutions, all failing at the same point. I led the team in taking apart the models again, for 5 straight days. I barely left the research campus. Ethan's messages went from angry to accusatory. Then from accusatory to desperate. "I went to see your mom. She wouldn't see me." "Clara, did you tell her bad things about me?" "I waited outside the hospital all afternoon. She told me to leave you alone." When I saw that last message, I'd just come out of the testing lab. My gloves were covered in condensation. I leaned against the hallway wall and laughed a little. My mom was smarter than me. On the 6th night, the project had its first successful small-scale test. When the data curve stabilized, the entire testing lab erupted in cheers. The young engineers almost jumped up and down. "Ms. Hale, we did it." Liam stood at the back of the crowd, smiling at me. "Congratulations." I stared at the curve on the screen. This wasn't luck. This was what I'd worked for 3 years ago, then put aside with my own hands. Now I'd picked it back up. At the celebration dinner that night, Director Hayes called me. "Clara, Ethan Bennett showed up at the institute." My chopsticks paused. The director continued. "He said you're emotionally unstable and that your transfer wasn't your real wish. He wants us to suspend your on-site assignment." The noise around me faded away. I heard myself say calmly, "What did the institute say?" The director laughed. "I showed him your signed paperwork, your project appointment letter, and the test results we just got today." I laughed too. "Thank you, Director. Thank yourself. You earned this position." I hung up the phone. I looked up and saw someone standing outside the conference room glass door. Ethan. He looked exhausted, his suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. When our eyes met, his face relaxed for a second, then he saw Liam standing next to me, and that relaxation turned to stiffness. He pushed open the conference room door. Everyone turned to look at him, but he only had eyes for me. "Clara, come home with me." The room went quiet. Liam stood up. "Sir, this is a private team meeting." Ethan didn't even look at him. He walked closer to me, his voice low and shaking. "I know I was wrong. I redecorated the wedding home. We can reschedule the wedding. I won't have anything to do with Lila anymore. Whatever you want, I'll do it." He pulled out the ring. He was gripping it so tightly his knuckles were white. "Don't throw your career away just to spite me." I put down my chopsticks. A flicker of hope appeared in Ethan's eyes. I handed the project files next to me to Liam. "Sync this data with headquarters. Airs tomorrow morning. Everyone get some rest tonight." Liam took the files and nodded. "Will do." I stood up and walked past Ethan. He froze in place. "Clara." I stopped at the door, not turning around. "This isn't me being spiteful," I said. "This is my job." The hallway lights were bright. There was no sound behind me for a long time, until I'd walked far away. I heard the soft clink of a ring hitting the floor. The sound was so light, but no one in the conference room spoke. Ethan bent down to pick up the ring, his fingers white, like he was holding on to the last shred of his dignity. I didn't look back. I pushed open the glass door into the hallway. Liam followed me out, stopping a few steps away. "Ms. Hale, should I call security?" I shook my head. "No, he'll leave soon." As soon as I finished speaking, I heard Ethan's low voice behind me. "Clara." He ran after me, his steps unsteady. I stopped and turned around. He stood under the hallway light, his eyes red, but his voice still tight. "You're just angry right now." I won't hold it against you. I looked at him. He really thought he'd done everything he could, making Lila move out, cleaning the wedding home, taking the train to Boston, publicly admitting he was wrong, in his eyes. That should have been enough to make me come back, but he didn't understand. It was all too late. I said, Ethan, don't come to the research campus again. His Adam's apple bobbed. I'm here to see my fiancé. Is that a problem? Two young engineers carrying files walked past the end of the hallway. When they heard that, they slowed down. I didn't raise my voice. The wedding's off. I gave back the ring. We're not together anymore. Ethan's face turned white. Liam stood beside me, not saying anything, just gesturing for the engineers to go back into the conference room. He didn't step in to defend me. And he didn't take over the conversation. He just let me handle it myself. That respect meant more than anything. Ethan saw what he did and his eyes turned colder. So now that you have someone backing you up, you're being tough. I pulled my employee ID badge out of my pocket and clipped it to my shirt. The silver plate had my name on it. Clara Hale, project lead. I fastened the clip carefully. I've always been like this. You just never listened. Ethan was rooted to the spot by those words. I walked past High M to the administrative office. The on-call administrator was still there, and she looked up immediately when I came in. Ms. Hale, what can I do for you? I handed her a form. I'd like to change my staff housing application from temporary 3 months to 1 year. She looked surprised. Are you sure? A 1-year assignment means you'll be added to the Boston permanent staff roster. Your project bonuses, office access, and travel permissions will all transfer over. I'm sure. I picked up the pen and signed the form. My handwriting was steady. Ethan stood in the doorway, and when he heard the word 1 year, his entire body stiffened. He walked in quickly. Clara, are you crazy? What about us if you stay here for a year? The administrator looked from him to me. I pushed the form back to her. There is no us. The administrator hesitated for a second, then quickly recovered. All right, Ms. Hale, I'll process this for you tomorrow. Ethan suddenly laughed. A bitter, ugly sound. You're putting on a good show, but can you really handle it here? Boston winters are freezing. You've always hated the cold. You have nightmares and need a nightlight on when your stomach hurts. You can't even find your medicine. His voice cracked at the end. Can you take care of yourself without me? I looked at him. He remembered. He remembered I hated the cold. Remembered I was a light sleeper. Remembered I had a weak stomach. But remembering didn't mean he cared. Every time I'd had a stomachache before, he'd only said, just take some medicine. Every time I'd worked late into the night, he'd only said, go to bed early. Every time I'd felt like I couldn't go on in our relationship, he'd only frowned and said, you're overthinking again. I took the stamped receipt from the administrator. Yes. That one word hit Ethan like a slap in the face. He stood there, suddenly silent. I walked out of the administrative office. He followed a few steps, then stopped. At the end of the hallway, Liam was handing some papers to the testing team. Ms. Hale, cryogenic chamber retest at 8:30 tomorrow morning. I nodded. I'll be there early. Ethan stared at our ordinary, professional exchange, his face slowly darkening. He was finally realizing that here, no one saw me as his accessory. No one called me Mrs. Bennett. No one expected me to put his feelings first. Here, they called me Ms. Hale. They waited for me to lead meetings, to sign papers, to make decisions. Ethan suddenly said, where are you staying tonight? Staff housing. I'll walk you there. No. He gritted his teeth. Clara, do you have to be so cruel? I swiped my ID badge at the access gate. It beeped and opened. Before I walked through, I looked back at him. Go home, Ethan, he said. I'm not going home. I didn't argue. The gate closed behind me. The glass door separated us. He stood there, holding that ring in his hand, like it was an old key that no longer opened any doors. The next morning, when I arrived at the testing lab, there was an insulated tote bag by the door. Inside were rice porridge, medicine, disposable hand warmers, and a note. Don't push yourself too hard. No signature. I'd recognize Ethan's handwriting anywhere. I took the rice porridge out and put it on the table in the common break room. An intern walking by asked, Ms. Hale, Can I have this? I said. Sure. Her eyes lit up. Thank you, Ms. Hale. I tore up the note and threw it in the trash. At 9 o'clock sharp, the cryogenic chamber retest began. The curve on the screen slowly rose. Liam stood next to the main console and glanced at me. You look like you're in good shape. I stared at the data. We're not out of the woods yet. At 10:27, the core data stabilized. A quiet cheer went up in the testing lab. I signed the retest confirmation form. At the bottom of the page, in the project lead box, my name was written clearly. At the same time, my phone lit up. Ethan had sent a message. I'm waiting for you downstairs. I put my phone face down and signed the next form. My permanent transfer to Boston was officially approved. Winter came quickly to Boston. 3 weeks after I moved into my permanent apartment, a thin layer of frost had already formed on the balcony railing. The campus gave me a new office. It wasn't big, just a desk, a whiteboard, and a pothose plant by the window. A nameplate was on the door. Clara Hale. Low Temperature Energy Storage Project lead. When they put the nameplate up, 2 interns were standing by the door watching. One of them whispered, Ms. Hale. That office was empty for 6 months. Everyone said no one could handle this project. I put my files away in the cabinet. Well, someone's handling it now. They laughed. There was no judgment in their laughter, no curiosity about my personal life, just relief that the project finally had direction. I loved that feeling. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the weekly team meeting started. I broke down the 3 sets of data: issues with the materials team, changes to the structural team, the next round of deadlines for the testing team. Everything was about the work. No one asked me why I canceled my wedding. No one asked if I'd fought with someone. They only asked, Ms. Hale, can we push this parameter a little lower? I said, we can. But we'll have to change the operating conditions. Let's test it tonight. Liam looked up. I'll stay late for the cryogenic chamber tonight. Another engineer immediately raised his hand. I'll stay too. I smiled a little. Overtime is fine. But everyone eat dinner first. A few quiet laughs went around the room. After the meeting, I got a video call from my mom. She was in the hallway of the rehabilitation center, walking slowly, holding onto the handrail. 1 step, 2 steps. On the 3rd step, she looked up at the camera, looking proud. See that? The doctor says I'm recovering better than expected. I sat in my office, my nose burning a little, but I smiled. I see. You're doing amazing, she asked. Is it cold in Boston? Very. Do you have enough clothes? Plenty. Is the food good? I glanced at the boxed lunch on my desk. It's fine. My mom didn't believe me. Don't lie to me. You've always hated cafeteria food. I was about to say something when there was a knock on my office door. Liam stood in the doorway, putting a bowl of hot soup on my desk. When he saw I was on a video call, he immediately stepped back. The cafeteria made chicken yam soup today. I got an extra bowl. My mom's eyes lit up on the screen. Who's that? I said. A colleague. Liam nodded politely at the camera. Hello, ma'am. I'm Liam Carter. My mom smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Hello, Liam. Thank you for taking care of our Clara. Liam didn't gush or make empty promises. She's our project lead. We all depend on her to keep the project on track. My mom blinked in surprise, then smiled even wider. Before she hung up, she said softly, Clara, this place is good for you. I knew she wasn't talking about the cafeteria or the office. She was talking about the fact that I was finally being seen as myself. We tested until 11 that night. The data stabilized for the 2nd time. The young engineers were so excited they almost knocked over their mugs. Liam handed me his coat. It's cold outside. Put this on. I didn't take it. Thank you. But I brought my own. He didn't look embarrassed. Just draped the coat over his arm. All right. I'll walk you to your building anyway. It's on my way. He said it was on his way. And that's exactly what he did. He walked me to the door of my apartment building and didn't try to come in or ask any personal questions. As I walked up the stairs, the motion sensor lights turned on one by one. The apartment was warm inside. I made myself a cup of hot water and turned on my computer to organize data. My phone suddenly popped up a text from an unknown number. Clara, I'm texting from someone else's phone. Did you block me? I stared at the message, realizing I couldn't remember when I'd blocked all of Ethan's contact information. It must have been when he'd sent too many messages in a row. My phone had automatically filtered his number into the spam folder. I didn't reply. Another text came. The nightlight broke at home. I stared at the screen. That simple sentence pulled up a memory from long ago. I'd bought that nightlight. Ethan had complained it was too bright and kept him awake. But every time he'd come home drunk late at night, he'd still used that little light to find his slippers. Later, he'd said, "I guess the light's not completely useless." I'd been so happy about that one sentence. Now, looking back, it felt pathetic. Getting excited because a man who claimed to love me had found one small use for something I'd bought. Another text came in. I bought a new one, but it won't turn on. I closed the text interface and opened my project report. That night, Boston had its first snowfall. When I woke up the next morning, everything outside was white. I went down to the cafeteria, and someone had built a tiny snowman by the door, with a piece of old insulation around its neck. An intern saw me and waved. "Ms. Hale, doesn't the snowman look like our project?" I stared at it for a minute. "How so?" She laughed. "It looks small, but it's really tough." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. That morning, the Institute officially announced that the Boston Low Temperature Energy Storage Project had been added to the key support list. Project lead, Clara Hale. The email was sent to the entire institute. 30 minutes later, a former colleague sent me a message. "Clara, you're on the institute-wide announcement. That's amazing. Everyone was saying you were crazy for canceling the wedding before. Now they're all quiet." Ethan Bennett was at the institute this morning talking to the director. He looked terrible. I didn't reply to anything about Ethan. I just wrote back, "The project's just getting started. We still have a lot of work to do." That afternoon, Director Hayes called me. "Clara, the Bennett family reached out through some connections. They're asking if we can transfer you back to New York City." My pen paused. The director quickly added, "I already told them no. Your appointment letter just came down. No one can transfer you." I laughed. "Thank you, Director." "Don't thank me." The director sounded amused. "This time, no one can withdraw your application for you." I hung up the phone. I sat in my office, watching the snow fall outside the window. That application I'd withdrawn 3 years ago had been like a delayed train ticket. Now it had finally taken me where I needed to go. That night, Ethan called from another new number. I answered. He was clearly surprised I'd picked up, his breath coming fast. "Clara," I said, "stop trying to interfere with my job through other people." There was a long silence on the other end. His voice lowered. "I just want you to come back." "I'm not coming back. Then I'll move to Boston to be with you." I put my pen down. "Ethan, listen to me carefully. I'm staying here because I want to, not because I'm waiting for you. And even if you move here, it won't change anything." He panicked. "What do you want me to do?" "I'm done with Lila. I cleared out the wedding home. We can have the wedding exactly how you want it. I'll keep apologizing to your mom until she forgives me." I closed my eyes. He was still doing the same thing, trying to fix a broken relationship like it was a late invoice, listing the things he'd done, thinking that would erase the past. I said, "You don't have to do any of that." His voice cracked. "You won't even accept my apology." No. Saying that word felt peaceful. There was a soft crash on the other end of the line, like a cup falling over. After a long time, he asked hoarsely, "Then what do you want?" I looked at the project appointment letter on my desk. "I already have everything I want." I hung up the phone. The snow was falling harder outside. My nameplate on the office door glowed brightly in the light. 6 months later, the Low Temperature Energy Storage Project passed its phase acceptance. The Boston campus held an internal celebration. No red carpet, no champagne, just 2 big pots of braised pork ribs the cafeteria ladies had made specially. The intern projected the acceptance screenshot onto the whiteboard. "Ms. Hale, picture time." They pushed me to the front, and I was still holding the file folder I'd just opened. Liam stood next to me, smiling, and handed me a cardboard sign. It said, "The cryogenic chamber finally stopped breaking down." I couldn't help laughing. When the photo was taken, I realized for the first time that my smile was easy and unforced. After the acceptance report came out, the institute promoted me. They also approved funding for the permanent Boston team. Director Hayes was happier than I was on the phone. Clara, you have to come back for the annual gala this year. You're giving the keynote speech. I signed the funding confirmation form as I spoke. Back to New York City. Yes, this year's joint gala is being held in your old city. My pen paused. The director heard it. Don't want to go. I looked out the window. It was spring in Boston now, and the willow trees in the campus courtyard were sprouting new leaves. I'll go. Some places you only need to run away from once. Going back doesn't mean you're going backward. The gala was in April. I arrived a day early. After landing, Liam and 2 other team members went to the hotel together. He'd been on the same flight as me, but we'd only talked about the presentation the entire time. In the hotel lobby, he handed me the presentation folder. You're speaking tomorrow. I have the backup files. I nodded. Thanks, Liam. He smiled. Anytime, Ms. Hale. Over the past 6 months, Liam had always been like this. Steady, clear, and respectful of boundaries. A few people on the team had teased us once. He'd said, "Don't joke about professional relationships." No one had teased us after that. I'd grown to care for him, slowly and gently, but I wasn't in a hurry to start anything new. I'd just gotten out of a 7-year relationship that had drained me. My new life was just beginning. I didn't want to fill the empty space with another person. The next day at the gala, I was backstage adjusting my PowerPoint. The host suddenly called me. "Ms. Hale, someone's here to see you." I walked out. Ethan was standing at the end of the hallway. He'd lost a lot of weight in the 6 months since I'd seen him. His suit was perfectly pressed, his hair neat, like he'd deliberately dressed himself in the style I used to like. He was holding a bouquet of white roses. I stopped walking. When he saw me, his eyes lit up for a second. "Clara." I looked at the flowers. I'd once said I liked white roses. He'd said they were too plain, that red roses were more festive. After that, he'd only ever given me red roses. Today, he'd remembered. Ethan held out the flowers. "Congratulations." I didn't take them. He spoke quickly, like he was afraid I'd leave before he could finish. "I sold the wedding home." I looked up at him. He latched onto that like it was the most important thing he could say. "I know that house made you uncomfortable, so I sold it. I already looked at a new apartment closer to the institute. If you don't like the renovation, we can redo it completely." He pulled out a set of keys. "This time, everything will be exactly how you want it." I looked at the keys. I suddenly remembered the day I'd pushed open the door to our future wedding home and seen Lila sitting on my couch. The crib I'd bought for our future baby had been used by her baby first. My reception gown had been stuffed under a box of diapers. My wedding program had been soaked with milk. Ethan probably thought selling one house could erase all those memories. He took a step closer. "Clara, I finally get it now. I got so used to having you around. I thought you'd never leave." His eyes slowly reddened. "Every night I go home to that empty apartment, and it feels wrong." I fixed the light, but it doesn't matter. The kitchen's never used. The cups just sit there. I washed your fox print mug and put it in the cabinet. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Come back and see, please." The clicker in my hand pressed gently into my palm. Someone called from backstage. "Ms. Hale, you're on next." I turned to answer. Ethan immediately said, "I'll wait until you're done." "No need." His face fell. "I have a team debrief after my speech." "What about tonight?" "I have a closed-door meeting tonight." "Tomorrow?" "I'm going back to Boston tomorrow." A look of panic crossed his face. "You won't even have dinner with me." I looked at him. "We don't have that kind of relationship anymore." Ethan's hand tightened around the flowers, and the stems crinkled. He was about to say something when a voice came from the other end of the hallway. "Ethan." Layla was standing there, wearing a beige coat, no baby in her arms. She looked thinner than she had 6 months ago. When she saw me, her eyes flickered. "Clara. Long time no see." I didn't respond. Lila looked at the flowers in Ethan's hand, and her face paled. "You said you were coming to a business gala today. You came here for her." Ethan frowned. "What are you doing here?" Lila laughed bitterly. Why shouldn't I be here? You haven't been home in 6 months. You didn't even come when the baby had a fever. I call you, and you're always near Boston. You said you'd take care of me, Ethan. People were starting to look over. Ethan's face darkened. Layla. Don't make a scene here. That sentence was so familiar. He'd said the exact same thing to me so many times before. Don't make a scene. Don't be embarrassing. Don't make me lose face. Tears filled Lila's eyes. Now you don't want me to make a scene. You're the one who told me to move into your wedding home. You said Clara was understanding and wouldn't mind. Now she's gone. And you're blaming everything on me. The hallway went completely silent. Ethan's face turned whiter and whiter. He instinctively looked at me. I didn't react at all. This messy, overdue argument had nothing to do with me anymore. The host called me again. More urgently this time. Ms. Hale, please come to the stage immediately. I started walking past Ethan. He suddenly reached out, like he was going to grab me. Liam came out from backstage and stepped between us. His movement was gentle, just creating a little space. Mr. Bennett. Ms. Hale needs to go on stage now. Ethan stared at him angrily. Who do you think you are? Liam's voice was calm and steady. I'm her colleague, and I'm assisting with her presentation today. He turned to me. Ms. Hale, let's go. I nodded. As I walked onto the stage, I heard Lila say through her tears, do you see, Ethan? She doesn't need you anymore. The spotlight came on. The auditorium was full of people. I stood in front of the screen and clicked to the first slide of my presentation. The title was simple. Low Temperature Energy Storage System. Phase Results Report. The host introduced me. And now, please welcome the project lead of the Boston Joint Laboratory, Ms. Clara Hale. Applause filled the room. I looked out and saw Ethan standing in the shadows of the first row. The white roses in his hand were crumpled beyond recognition. I looked away. Hello, everyone. I'm Clara Hale. In that moment, he was in the audience. I was on the stage. Our positions had finally, completely reversed. When I finished my presentation, the applause was louder than I'd expected. The dean came up on stage personally to present me with the annual Technical Breakthrough Award. The certificate was thick and heavy in my hands, the edges crisp and clear. Someone called out, Ms. Hale, look at the camera. I stood with my team for the photo. Liam was on my left, the head of the materials team on my right. No one pushed me toward any man. No one attached my name to anyone else's. After the photos, I'd just stepped off the stage when several former colleagues surrounded me. Clara, I mean. Ms. Hale. We should call you Ms. Hale now. We never knew you were this brilliant. If you hadn't withdrawn that Boston application 3 years ago, you'd be even further ahead. The person who said that suddenly realized what he'd said and trailed off. I smiled. It's never too late. They relaxed and smiled too. It was a strange feeling. When I'd worked in New York City, everyone had always referred to me as Ethan Bennett's fiancée, the future Mrs. Bennett, the nice girl who was dating Ethan. Now they called me Ms. Hale. The title had changed, and I'd finally found my footing. There was a signing ceremony after the presentations. The Boston project was expanding its partnership with the Headquarters Institute. I signed the agreement as the project lead. The pen left clean, black ink on the paper. After I signed, the dean smiled and said, Clara, you should think about leading your own independent team soon. I nodded. I'm already working on the proposal. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ethan standing at the edge of the ballroom. He was watching me sign the agreement, and the last bit of light in his eyes went out. He'd always said, don't work so hard. Girls with too much ambition get tired. Later, he'd said, when we get married, I'll support whatever you want to do. But every step I'd taken to get where I was had been without his support. When the cocktail hour started, Layla was gone. Ethan was still there. He didn't come closer, just stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching me. The white roses were gone. He'd probably thrown them away. Liam brought me a glass of warm water. Your voice is hoarse. Don't drink any alcohol. I took it. Thank you. A partner from a collaborating company laughed and teased. Mr. Carter's very attentive to Ms. Hale. Liam's expression didn't change. She's our main speaker tonight. We need to protect her voice. The partner nodded and smiled. Not saying anything else, I took a sip of the warm water. It was exactly the right temperature. This kind of care was light, not heavy. It didn't require gratitude, and it didn't demand anything in return. Halfway through the cocktail hour, the dean called me over to meet some investors. I'd just turned around when Ethan finally walked over to me. His voice was low. "Clara." I stopped. Liam stopped too, his eyes on me, waiting for me to decide what to do. I said, "You go ahead. I'll be right there." Liam nodded and walked away. Ethan watched him leave. "Do you like him?" I looked at him, and suddenly I wanted to laugh. After everything that had happened, this was still the only thing he cared about, whether there was another man in my life. I didn't answer. Ethan's throat tightened. I looked him up. "He's single, comes from a good family, works with you every day in Boston. Is that why you won't come back?" Ethan. His name felt strange on my lips now. His eyes flickered. I said, "I'm not coming back because I don't want to come back." All the color drained from his face. I put my empty glass on a waiter's tray. "It has nothing to do with anyone else." His eyes reddened, like those words had finally broken him. For the past 6 months, he'd told himself so many lies. That I was just angry. That I'd been influenced by someone else. That I'd found someone new. That I was too busy with work. That I was still waiting for him to make it up to me. The one thing he'd refused to admit was that I'd left because he'd lost me. The large screen in the ballroom suddenly lit up. The host announced the annual team photo. "Would the Boston Joint Laboratory team please come to the stage?" I turned to leave. Ethan suddenly pulled a red velvet box out of his pocket. "Clara." He opened the box. Inside was a new ring. The diamond was huge, catching the light and sparkling painfully. The people around us immediately went quiet. Someone recognized him and whispered, "Isn't that Ethan Bennett? Didn't he and Ms. Hale used to be engaged?" I thought the wedding was cancelled. Ethan didn't seem to hear them. He got down on one knee. The entire ballroom went quiet. He looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot. "Clara, I know I've missed so many chances with you. I don't want to miss this one." I sold the wedding home. I cut off all contact with Lila. I talked to my mom and explained everything. "Everything you ever wanted: the wedding, the home, the public commitment. I can give you all of it now." His voice cracked. "Please give me one more chance. If this had happened 7 years ago, I probably would have cried. If it had happened 3 years ago, I might have hesitated. But now." The lights on the stage were waiting for me. My team was waiting for me. The Boston project was waiting for me. I had my signed agreement, my own office, my own apartment, photos of my mom's physical therapy progress, and a calendar full of work plans for the next year. All those things were real, more real than this late, desperate ring. I looked at Ethan. "Stand up." A flicker of hope crossed his face. I said, "This is an annual corporate gala, not your redemption stage." His face crumpled. The silence around us was so thick you could hear glasses clinking in the distance. I didn't lower my voice. "I wanted those things once because I wanted a future with you. I don't want that anymore." Ethan stayed on his knees, his hand still holding the ring up. His lips trembled. "Then what do you want now?" I looked toward the stage. The host called again. "Ms. Hale, please join us on stage for the photo." I walked past him. "I want to go on stage." Someone in the crowd gasped softly. I walked up the steps and stood in the middle of my team. Liam moved over to make space for me. "Ms. Hale." "Right here." I stood still. The flash went off. Below the stage, Ethan was still kneeling on the floor. He slowly lowered his hand and closed the velvet box. The ring never made it onto my finger. When the photo was published on the Institute's website later, the headline read, "Boston Low Temperature Energy Storage Team Wins Annual Technical Breakthrough Award." Ethan wasn't in the photo. The day after the gala, I went back to the address of the old wedding home, not to see Ethan. A real estate agent had called me, saying there was a box of things in the storage room with my name on it. Ethan had sold the house, and the new owners were moving in at the end of the month. Some things needed to be cleared out. When I arrived at the apartment complex, Ethan was already waiting at the gate. He was holding a cardboard box. He looked like he'd aged years overnight. There was stubble on his chin, and dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he stood up a little straighter. I thought you wouldn't come. I'm here to get my things. He nodded and handed me the box. It wasn't heavy. Inside were a few old books, a nightlight, half a box of scented candles, and the fox print mug. The mug was wrapped carefully in bubble wrap. I looked at it, then took out the nightlight and the mug and put them on the nearby trash can. Ethan's face changed. You don't want them? No, but they were your favorite things. They were my favorite things once. His hand froze in midair. Someone walked by with a dog, and the bell on its collar jingled. Ethan and I had walked through this same complex when we'd first looked at the house. That day, he'd held my hand and said we could get a dog someday. I'd said I wanted a cat. He'd said, then we'll get both. Instead, the first things to move into that house had been Lila and her baby. Some promises sound beautiful in the moment. Later, they just sound ridiculous. Ethan stared down at the mug. Clara, I've been thinking about this non-stop. If I hadn't let Lila move into the house, would we still be together? I held the cardboard box. No. He looked up sharply. I looked at him calmly. That was just the last straw. The wind blew through the gate. His eyes filled with tears. Tell me what else I did wrong. I'll change everything. I promise. There's no point. There is a point. Tell me. I'm listening. I looked at the desperation on his face. If this had been before, I would have listed every single thing. How he'd forgotten my doctor's appointment to go to Lila's birthday. How he'd missed my mom's first follow-up appointment to help Lila with her divorce. How he'd called my Boston application pointless trouble. How he'd laughed to his friends that I was easy to handle, just ignore me for a few days, and I'd come crawling back. But saying all that now would just drag us both back into the mud of the past. I didn't want to go back there. I said, Ethan, I'm not keeping score anymore. That scared him more than any anger could have. He reached out to touch the box in my hands, then pulled back. You don't even hate me anymore. I didn't answer. My phone rang. It was my mom. She was being discharged from the rehabilitation center today, and I'd ordered an Uber to pick her up and take her to my place. I answered, Mom, I'm on my way. Her voice was bright on the other end. Take your time. Honey, I'm sitting in the lobby waiting. The nurse just said I walked really well today. I smiled. I'll bring you lemon shortbread. Your favorite. Perfect. I hung up the phone. Ethan was staring at me blankly. Your mom's being discharged. Yes. His lips moved. Can I come see her? No. He looked like he'd been punched in the stomach, his shoulders slumping. I started walking toward the Uber waiting by the curb. He followed a few steps. Clara, what am I supposed to do now? That question was so soft, like it had finally slipped out of him against his will. Before, he'd always asked me, why are you angry again? What do you want from me? Can't you just be reasonable? This was the first time he'd asked what he was supposed to do. I stopped walking. That's your problem. The Uber driver opened the trunk for me. I put the cardboard box inside. Ethan stood in the same spot, staring at me like he was still waiting for me to turn around. I got into the car. The door closed. This time, he didn't run after me. As the car drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw him slowly bend down and pick up the fox print mug from the trash can. He held it like it was a piece of his broken past. I looked away. First, I went to pick up my mom. She was sitting in the lobby of the rehabilitation center, wearing a light blue coat, her small duffel bag next to her. When she saw me, she stood up and walked 2 steps toward me. Her steps were slow, but steady. I went to help her. She pushed my hand away. I can do it myself. I smiled and stepped back. All right, show me what you've got. She looked at the cardboard box in my hand. Got your things? Yes. Still hurt? I thought about it for a second. A little. But not much. She nodded. Good. We didn't go back to her old house. I'd rented a short-term apartment for her near Boston, close to both the rehabilitation hospital and the research campus. It faced south, and the balcony got lots of sun. My mom walked around the apartment once and pointed to the kitchen. I can make soup in here. I said, you just got out of the hospital. Don't overdo it. She glared at me. You think I came to Boston to relax? I came to make sure you eat properly. I laughed out loud. That night, my mom made chicken yam soup. The smell filled the small kitchen. Liam and 2 other engineers came by to drop off some project files. and my mom insisted they stay for dinner. She served soup to everyone. Thank you all for taking care of our Clara. Liam took his bowl. Actually, ma'am, she's the one taking care of all of us and the project. My mom beamed with pride and glanced at me. There was pride in her eyes. And relief. A month later, the Boston team officially expanded. I moved into a bigger office and started leading a team of 6 people. The project entered its next phase, and I was busier than ever. My mom's recovery continued to go well. She started making friends in the nearby park, learned how to order groceries on her phone, and kept sending me photos of the flowers she saw on her walks. Liam still kept that comfortable distance between us. He'd argue with me until midnight about project problems. But he'd also leave stomach medicine on my desk when I wasn't feeling well. Without saying a word, in late spring, he asked me, "Clara, when this phase is over, can I take you out to dinner?" Properly. I looked at him. He added quickly, "Not a work dinner." I smiled. "Ask me again when we pass the phase acceptance." He nodded. "All right. I'll wait for acceptance." He didn't push me, and I didn't pull away. Some new things are better when they take their time. As for Ethan, I only heard a few things about him. He'd cut off all contact with Lila for good. Lila had moved to the south with the baby. The Bennett family had removed him from a major project because of his erratic behavior over the past 6 months, after selling the wedding home. He'd been living in an apartment near his office. A former colleague told me he kept that fox print mug on his desk. It had a small chip on the rim. He looked at it every day. At the end of the year, the Boston project received National Pilot Program status. At the celebration ceremony, my mom sat in the front row. When I went up to give my speech, I saw her holding up her phone to take a video, her hand shaking a little, but smiling so brightly. I held the microphone. The lights from the audience blurred into a sea of gold. I didn't think about the old wedding home. I didn't think about the creased reception gown. I didn't think about the late ring. I only saw my name on the screen behind me. Clara H. A.L., Principal Investigator. After the ceremony, Liam was waiting for me backstage. My mom stood nearby, pretending not to watch, but smiling the whole time. He asked, "Can I take you to dinner now?" I looked at the certificate in my hand. Then I looked out the window at the snow falling outside. Boston winters were still cold, but this year, I hadn't been cold once. I said, "Yes." He smiled, not far away. My mom gave me a secret thumbs up. I smiled too. My phone vibrated in my bag. It was a text from an unknown number. "It's snowing this year." I looked at it for a second, then deleted it. I didn't block the number. I just didn't reply. That part of my life wasn't my problem anymore. I put my phone back in my bag and walked toward the door with Liam. The snow fell softly on the steps, clean and white. My mom called after me to be careful. I turned around and waved. The lights from the hall spilled out behind us, stretching our shadows long across the snow. This time, the place I was walking toward had my work, my family, hot soup, and a new dinner date. And most importantly, it had me.